Hello, parishioners. Thank you for tuning in for another episode of bonus content. So, on this previous episode, we got to a very pivotal moment in the story of Exodus, which is when Moses receives the Ten Commandments. The Ten Commandments, obviously, extremely influential on law, especially on American law, on our Judeo-Christian values, on our sense of morality and what's wrong and right. So, first of all, I want to ask you, Emily, when we read that scene of, like, God telling Moses what the Ten Commandments were, what was happening in that scene? How did you envision it actually happening? How did you envision Moses actually receiving the Ten Commandments?
Well, I'd always heard about there being like a slab of like some sort of rock slab, and that one could see all of them written on this slab, but I heard nothing of a slab, so I don't know. I more just like saw God in his cloud, like on the mountain, and everyone was looking up at the mountain, and then God was like shouting down the commandments, and that was it.
Okay, basically. So when you're envisioning like, yeah, God is just like shouting these commandments, and people are just kind of having to take some notes real quick to remember them.
It sounds about right.
I'm actually
Okay.
not so sure anymore that the people could actually hear God speaking. I think maybe they were just hearing the trumpets and the thunder. And Moses was one kind of
Moses was getting
dictating. Yeah, I think so.
And he had to like furiously write everything down and then come down the mountain and be like, okay, everyone, here they are. Ready? Get out your pens, get out your paper. Here we go.
I kind of got that impression from the way that everyone was like, we don't want to talk to God or go up there because we'll probably die.
Like, no, please don't.
Scary.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, well, we're just going to watch a brief little scene from the Ten Commandments with Charlton Heston and see how they chose to interpret Moses receiving the Ten Commandments.
Cool.
Here we go. So Moses up on the mountain.
That's kind of... Whoa, okay. That's scary.
So for our listeners at home not watching this video, God is represented as this huge pillar of fire. And anytime God lists out a commandment, this like fireball comes shooting out and engraves it into the side of the mountain. And Moses is like having to cower and dodge this fireball.
Wow. I love this music. Dun 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 dun. Whoa there, big red ball.
Okay, so God himself is carving this into stone with like fire blasts.
With his fireballs.
Yeah, it's very, very dramatic, like some very intense practical effects on stage that day. He's even like carving out the slabs that you mentioned, Emily. Like carving these slabs out of the mountain with his fire so that Moses can come and pick them up.
Off the mountain.
Exactly.
So it's multiple slabs.
2 of them.
Well, you know, 2 slabs.
And he's caressing the slab and hugging it to his breast.
Wow. Look at this.
Okay, that's the end of that. Anyway, I just
Hear me, fear me, believe me? What is that?
That's some YouTube stuff.
That's not
Don't pay attention to that. Anyway, it was so funny because when I was like previewing this clip before we started watching it, I was cracking up because there's just something so gaudy and so over the top about this like fireball coming out of the sky to carve the Ten Commandments into the side of the mountain. I suppose at the time that the movie was made, it makes sense that it's like, oh, this is trying to show the weight and the power of God, but it's just, I don't know, I think now it just comes across as kind of funny to me.
Yeah.
Well, and also, again, like I said, like I always envisioned like these slabs of stone that had the Ten Commandments on it, but nothing like that is spoken of in the Bible, so that's completely like movie magic, movie propaganda that people think that like there was a stone or multiple stones of words. There wasn't.
Well, hang on a second, because is there any mention in the Bible of them actually being on, like, the tablets?
So, it's, I don't want to give spoilers, but the tablets come late.
Is it coming? Is it coming?
Oh.
It's coming, but it's actually
Okay.
not coming anytime soon.
Oh, interesting.
Right? Let's see.
That's very strange.
At least
you
I
just
don't think
remember
so.
this,
Wait,
Jace?
maybe it's not. No. Well, so I was doing some research on the Ten Commandments as well for this bonus content.
Okay.
Well, maybe it is going to come up. Oh, yeah. Sorry. It is coming up later, but not next episode. Maybe a few episodes from now. I think we will get the thing. We'll get the actual, tablets and all that. And more stuff happens with the tablets later on. But yeah, no, that was surprising because I did, in my memory, it was like given on tablets in the first place instead of, where it was just God kind of reciting
That's how
it.
this was depicted.
Yeah, I also thought it was interesting that all of the commandments, or not all of them, but most of them have a lot of like clarification and sort of additional stuff that when it's all just written down as like the 10 Commandments, it's usually just the like, you shall have no other gods before me. And it leaves out the whole rest of like, nor of any, or like, because I am a jealous God and whatever, or like the not making any graven images or false idols or however the translation decides to say it. So I thought that was interesting that kind of hearing the whole thing spelled out. I feel like it's less obviously a list of 10 things when some of them are like a few sentences long explaining and others are just like, you shall not murder.
Right.
No murder.
Yeah, exactly.
No adultery.
Well, I guess they assume that that's pretty self-explanatory.
I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah, that was really interesting. And yes, Charlton Heston, I think, did a good job in that he was a cowering Moses because it seems like Moses did a lot of cowering to God. But for whatever reason, God was like, this is the guy. He's my guy.
Yeah.
We're going to use him. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, he picked him. Yeah. Even though he wasn't a strong speaker or any of those things.
Nope. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
So something that I was looking up was kind of, because I'm looking at this sort of historically and going, okay, this is a list of laws, right? It's a list of laws and rules and wondering like, how does this stack up with other sort of first written systems of law? And I'm sure we all remember from our history class, the most famous legal code ever.
The code of Hammurabi.
Ding, ding, ding. Very well done.
Oh, I saw it. It's in the Louvre.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
well, it
is
was
it?
only discovered
It's on like a giant pillar thing.
It was only discovered in 1901, which is bonkers.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
Recently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yes, the Code of Hammurabi was very significant because it's the oldest sort of like thoroughly written out code of laws and stuff like that's ever been discovered. And so, people believe it was probably the first. So what's interesting is, that one was written, the Code of Hammurabi was written in like the 17th century or the 18th century BC, right? So like in the 1700s-ish. And the 10 Commandments were about 300 years later in like the 1400s.
Oh, wow.
Oh, really?
Wow.
I had no
Yeah.
idea.
So sort of contemporaries-ish of each other, although the Ten Commandments came a fair amount later. What's interesting is that the Ten Commandments, that the Code of Hammurabi was the Babylonians, who were in that same part of the world. So it is interesting to see that these sort of written systems of law would have come about, around the same time-ish. 300 years, I guess, is close to the same time when you're that far back in history.
All relative. Yeah. Wow.
So I was trying to look up, like, are these related, right? Like we talked about with flood stories showing up in a number of different mythologies and stuff. And so I was looking this up, too, and what's interesting about it is that they do have a lot of similarities. For example, harsh penalties of being put to death in cases of adultery and kidnapping. Same in the Code of Hammurabi. They have similar things, such as the whole eye for an eye situation. Or, for example, Statute 206 of the Code of Hammurabi says, if during a quarrel one man strike another man and wound him, then he shall swear, I did not injure him wittingly, and pay the physicians. And that in ours it was the same of like if you hurt someone but you don't kill him and you say like, oh, I did it on accident, then there's fines or whatever rather than being put to death.
Being put to death, yeah.
Right. So there's some similarities. Same thing. Right. About like being confined to bed rather than dying. What's interesting though is that they're a little bit different in that the Code of Hammurabi kind of covers a whole kind of wider range of things. It's like administrative laws and civil laws as well as these more like criminal ones here. Whereas the Ten Commandments is a bit more limited. The Ten Commandments here is sort of including the little addendum that we just read.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is just sort of interesting kind of looking at that. The other thing is that the Code of Hammurabi was believed to have been given by a god. It was given by the god of justice, whose name I've lost now, but the Babylonian god of justice gave the laws to him, whereas the god Yahweh of the Hebrews gave the Ten Commandments. So they have that in common too.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
But the Code of Hammurabi doesn't cover stuff about how to worship your god, whereas the Ten Commandments does have some of that about the false idols and things like that.
Yeah.
Right, that makes sense.
Anyway, yeah, I just thought this was super interesting, and it's interesting too because a lot of the articles written about it are it's hard to find, I guess, unbiased articles and information about this because it tends to be a lot of stuff that's either from Christian Bible scholar sites, right, that are trying to argue how this can't be related to the Code of Hammurabi because if it was, that would mean this whole story we just read in Exodus was fake about God telling him these things.
Right, or it'd mean that it wasn't divine and handed down from God.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, and then on the other side, the stuff I found that was more historically about the Ten Commandments just tended to not go into as much depth comparing the two. I did find one thesis paper on it, but I didn't feel like reading that. So sorry.
Right.
Jeez.
Well, super fascinating stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're excited to maybe continue more with our talks on the Ten Commandments, how they were made, and just some stits and stats about it. No, not that. Oh, God.
I'm sure we'll get more into the weeds as all these different bylaws and ordinances and stuff come out.
Totally.
For sure.
All right. Well, we'll see you next week.